fly so high, so proud, so brave, so free. Your feathers are fired, fly to the sky, and your spirit is one with me. Your wings stand on mighty ocean, your eyes see everything. Of your motion can make the continents ring. Yet in all your might and glory, vanished from the sky. It's just another story. It's me, man-made lie. Because how it fell from the sky.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas, and my guest today is Dr. Jake Wade, the founder of the Little Red Schoolhouses, the founder of Timothy Bible College, and the author of a new book. Tell me about it.
Spiritual, biblical psychology almost sounds like an oxymoron, but that's only because of our lack of understanding over the years. The Bible and science agree quite heartily if one looks at it truthfully. And that's basically what the book's about.
All right, where did I'd kind of like to understand here, where did science and the Bible split off from each other? When
the worst split probably occurred when Darwinism, evolution, was embraced by the education system. It is my opinion, I can't guarantee you this is fact, but it is my opinion that those who wish to do the communist takeover saw this as an opportunity to divert the American people away from their foundation, and in so doing they have eroded education to the point we can't even keep up with third world countries.
That's true. That's true. And you say communist system here. You know, I think the term has almost been made irrelevant. Whether communist or fascism, what we've got are tyrants here, don't we, Jake?
Yeah, yeah.
And they've been trying to induce this tyranny for 2,000 years. Now, I look at Jesus. I look at the whole story of Jesus and the Bible, and I'm just working on a new article. I suggested that perhaps we should look at the Bible as a plan for the elitists, as opposed to prophecy. It's like they're living up to it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
For 2,000 years, the Bible has told us and warned us about the mark of the beast. And it's told you won't be able to buy or sell without it, and yet right now, in this time period, first time in 2,000 years, the technology is not only there, they got commercials for it.
Well, and you're right, it's not new. Solomon wrote in Proverbs, or in Ecclesiastes, we're going to be the product of our own inventions. We're going to suffer because of our own inventions, and we have done that through, and I've written this book was totally written on a computer. I'm not anti-computer, but we have allowed our young people, generation by generation, this is the worst one I've seen yet, they dive into that little box and live there. And therefore, everything that they see on there is photographed by a mind which records it, just like putting it into your save category and going into your memory banks in your computer. It goes in there. And we have been duped as a people into believing that somehow Uncle Sam, of course there isn't any, but Uncle Sam, our government, is going to take care of us. And that to me is one of the biggest fallacies, getting away from just Bible when we turned from God, when we turned from the rugged individualism that made us great and began to depend on an uncle that isn't even real, you know, it's and the dumbing down. One of the early fathers said that you cannot enslave a well-educated and armed people. Well, they got our education, now they're aiming for the guns. You know, we're right there.
Now, we just came across we just passed the 10th anniversary of September 11th. In the article that I'm working on, Jake, I said September 11th was the biggest, most spectacular false flag operation in history. It led us into 2 wars, distracted us from a real invasion taking place right now. It gave us an enemy where none existed. No Iraqi troops were massed on our borders. No Arabs in a cave in Afghanistan flew remote-controlled planes into skyscrapers and caused them to fall down. Yet hundreds of thousands of people of all races and religions have died in the last 10 years in the wars that followed. But it was nothing new.
I'll amend that, and if I might, may I take that a step further?
Yes, sir.
Biblically, because it is what Satan always manages to do, is to throw up a diversion where we look at ourselves and say, oh, we have something going on we don't understand, so let's put a name on it and attack it without looking at the situation, without, as we have done as a people since the inception of man way back in the garden. We don't learn from history, so we're doomed to repeat the same mistakes. As you said, over and over again, we're letting the elitists, the Illuminati, those people who are leaning towards oppression of a general populace, we continue to let them take over because we get lazy and complacent and forget what got us where we were when we were good.
Well, you know what, Jake? I said it's nothing new. The people,
it isn't anything new. No.
The people who have been crafting this have been working hard at this for thousands of years.
Oh yeah.
And I said,
and you know, by your own great historical uncovering and presentation of the Rothschild syndrome, that family, that name has been on this for a long time now. That hasn't changed. We're not even looking at different players.
No, we're not. I said 9/11 was merely the first shot over the bow in the final push towards culling the masses of humanity to the elite's acceptable population levels, fomenting war after war, situation after situation, to reduce populations and tighten the controls on the people under the guise of a new world order that's code for one world government of the banksters, by the banksters, and for the banksters. On 9/11, 3,000 people were sacrificed, and the lies were so obvious that even the common, drugged-out, dumbed-down couch potato started to sit straight and say, what the fuck? What's happening here? The lies are being foisted upon us, Jake, and it was just reported that the firefighters and first responders who were there and heard the bombs going off in lobbies were barred from the 10th anniversary memorial.
Well, let me do a supposition, and you know I like to deal in only fact.
Yes, sir.
We know Rothschild and bank control is a fact. I believe, as you have suggested, that they are at the base of all of this so-called terrorism because they operate better in a realm of fear. And they have most of the news media out there doing this, and in fact, some of the short waivers that we counted on have even gone that way. Oh, everybody's going to die. Everything's terrible. We got terrorists running around all the corners. And the fact of the matter is, just like you stated, there is nothing new. We should have seen it coming. There was an FBI tape I saw, or a CIA, whatever it was, tape, almost 10 years prior to those towers being taken down, where somebody taped the planning of it. I've seen it.
Yes.
It's not like we didn't know what was going to happen or what was going on. And at the base of all this, I believe God either laid it out or planned it to try to get our attention. We got the worst drought in Texas that's ever been recorded. Who are you going to blame that on?
I call it weather wars, Jake.
Get our attention.
I call it weather wars. We got flooding up in the north and the east, and Texas is dry as a bone. And we know that the government has the ability to control the weather.
Yeah. Well, we got half the state's burning up.
Yes.
I was 3 miles from one of these fires. I'm sitting here looking at it in my backyard, and Kay and I drove down the road to get right in the middle of the fire to see what we needed to do to prepare. We were looking at it coming right at us. And my approach to that was not, oh boy, they've set a fire, or the terrorists are out, or whatever. My idea was, how unimportant is the little place I'm living on with all the little stuff I've amassed compared to the bigger picture? We need to get this, and I preached this on Sunday to a small flock of people. It's time we saw these things as a wake-up call. I don't care who's pushing the buttons. I don't care who's doing what. Look back at pure history and then tie it into biblical history. We keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Now, I've said that the number of people killed since in the last 10 years in military exercises, the soldiers and all that, and our victims too, and that number is a drop in the bucket compared to the millions of German, French, Korean, Vietnamese, Iraqis, Palestinian, Afghanis, and now Libyans killed in our wars and subsequent police actions. I said, war is hell. We all know that. So why do we keep going back into them?
Amen.
Perhaps the civilian population are just being entertained or programmed by watching the war on TV. How about when the target is you, the people of your country? What if they want? What if they want the natural resources of your country, or just a product of your label? And you got to remember, the bank's strategy is to finance both sides. So. Who won the Cold War? Who won the Cold War, Jake?
Rothschild.
100 in this century. Now, I made this statement, and I want to, you're the professor of my college. I made the statement that what if we were in Armageddon right now, and had been for the last 100 years. And the press just didn't tell us.
All right, well, let me explain
and our churches can't tell us because they're 501c3 corporations, and they can only speak about certain subjects that the government allows. In the last century, in the 20th century, 170 million civilians have been murdered by their own governments. What makes you think, folks, it can't happen here, or that it isn't happening here right now?
First of all, you know why the 501c3 is a corporation type that people like us aim at is because those who get into 501c3 believe they have to have a lawyer write it up, and the lawyer is a member of the BAR, so he ties that law into the government, and there's nothing when you sign the papers that becomes law. All you have to do, I have a 501c3, but it's not written like that. It says I will take part in the political process, I will pull for a candidate, I will support him if I wish to, and the state signed off on it because they didn't read it. It is law, and most of our churches have gotten under that because they say that's what we should do. And all it does is tie their mouths and their hands so they can't do what they're supposed to do under penalty of the law they wrote themselves or had a lawyer write for them. There's nothing wrong with a 501c3. The problem is we have lawyers writing the papers and making the deal with the government.
And these are people that hold a title of nobility to a foreign power. Exactly.
And who are they going to be loyal to? It's sure enough.
They tell you they're upfront about it. They work for the court. They're an officer of the court. And the court works for the Rothschilds. The court works for the bankers. The police forces work for the bankers.
Our Federal Reserve doesn't, nor has it ever, belonged to us, and we have no control over it here. It's foreign. And yet they determine our economic policy. What's wrong with this picture? And let me throw one other thing in there. You know about this, Lindsey Williams.
Yes.
He was in Alaska. I sat and listened to his presentation over in West Virginia, Butch Paul's deal. I know this because I know other insiders. You know Randall Mott. He was fairly close to some of this. He's actually been in Alaska. They have, according to Lindsey, and I agree with him, enough oil and gas up there to last us for about 20 years and never buy one foreign drop. But the Rothschild bunch, the banker says, oh, no, we're not going to let all this out because it will ruin our banking control. Am I getting this right?
Yes. Yes.
So their whole purpose is to control people through the dollar. And if you back off and look at this practically, there isn't a dollar bill, a piece of paper in this world with a number printed on it that we call dollars that's worth anything greater than toilet paper. It's all fiat.
Right.
And it only has the value that somehow we place on it because we somehow trade with it. If you were trading goods for goods, you'd get an honest trade. As it is, they're playing with monopoly money. It's no better than monopoly money.
But it represents everything that they've built here. I think they've built in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bible tells us what the answer is, Jake. You know, it says, "Come out of her." If you think of the Rothschild,
Babylon, you bet.
If you
and
think of Rothschild,
yeah,
if you think about the Rothschilds as being the beast, actually, I think the television is the beast they referred to.
Well, you know that they named the computer mainframe that controls the European common market that the Rothschilds are over. They call it the beast.
Right.
That's the name of it. And they're not damaging the American people. They are literally going against God's design for man. And that's why you said, you know, you wrote a book on this and laid the history out pretty well. The Mysery Babylon, there is no mystery, is there?
Not really. No. and they, you know, I had a guest on my show just a few days ago. His name's Gordon Duff, and he's the editor of Veterans Today. I'm writing for this article I was just sharing with you. Those comments that I just made. I'm writing a story now for Veterans Today, and he's Jewish. We're talking about a tall, blonde-haired, you know, blue-eyed guy, and some of his family was Jewish. I said, you know, I don't have any problem believing that your ancestors and mine walked across the Caucasus Mountains and became called Caucasians, and then walked off in different directions and went other directions. Now, why don't they want us to think this? Where did this whole Jews are the chosen people? I think we're the chosen people. I think we were the Israelites. I think we crossed the Caucasus Mountains. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that belief system? And why is the Homeland Security suddenly trying to demonize anybody that's Christian identity?
Well, you know, you got to go back again to the Rothschild problem in Germany. They demonized the true Jew and the true Christian men and put a whole bunch of them to death in mass murder to create the concept by Europeans that we were inferior. And that way, okay, we can herd you around and we can put you in different places and treat you shabbily. And that has been perpetuated by a group called the Zionists who claim to be Israel who are not.
And Jesus told us that.
Yeah, he did.
He told us, you know, that the Jews who say
newsflash. But people don't want to look at that. It is simpler than what it's made out to be. As long as they keep us under the terror threat and oh, you know, we got to have Homeland Security because I got Homeland Security right here. It's a 12-gauge shotgun with a 31-inch barrel. That's my Homeland Security.
Well, I am putting together an event over in Cochise County along with the sheriff there. Now, the sheriff is the #1 law enforcement that affects your life. I mean, he can kick the feds out of his county if he wants.
Well, they are by Constitution, the sheriff is the highest local authority over any other form of government.
So we're putting together an event to support the sheriff. He wanted to talk about illegals. I said, well, we can't talk about it out in the open because if we do, they're going to just sit and start calling us racist. That's what they do.
Yeah.
And I've been attacked for 24 years like that, and I certainly don't care what color you are. You know, as long as you're not trying to force your religion over me.
Right.
The Constitution covers that, I think, pretty thoroughly in the First Amendment. You got the right to worship however you want. You want to bang your head against that wailing wall, knock yourself out, I'll watch.
Yeah.
You
know, ask me to join you.
That's right. You want to stick your nose in the ground, man, and your ass up in the air? You know, pray to Maccas 3 times a day? No problem, dude. I'll try to keep the St. Bernard off of you.
Right.
You know, and I almost feel the same way about the Christians that are you know, call themselves Judeo-Christians.
Well, that you can't do that.
That's an oxymoron, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
So that's, to me, that's like, Jake, that's like saying I'm a satanic Christian. Thanks.
It is. It is. It's the heritage of Jesus was Jewish. He was a Hebrew. But his offer to the Jew was rejected. And he turned to the Gentile and said, now you're it. As you said, we are the new Israel. We are the real deal. And with him, I mean, my Bible says that's the only ticket. Now, I'm a Bible-toting, screaming believer, and my book says there is no other way to do it. Now, it also says you don't condemn the other guy because he doesn't get it. So I'm back to what you said originally. Why are we in other people's countries imposing a religion and a political process on them that we haven't managed to make work here? Why do we shoot their people? Why do we, you know, and you're back to, why are we going after foreign oil? Why are we seeking Hussein's gold? Why are, greed. I think that's always been the bottom line.
It's what the Bible's all about, Jake. I mean, it keeps telling you about tyranny. I mean, you got pharaohs that want to kill all the children.
Yeah.
And back to my comment about Armageddon being the last 100 years. 170 million civilians have been murdered by their own governments, communist governments in Russia and places like Rwanda, and it's happening in Libya right now. We're helping, and we killed a lot of people in Vietnam and a lot of people in Iraq. Thousands of people.
Let me give you straight Bible on that. Armageddon is not an event. It is a location for a gathering of people in a spiritual war. And that makes you absolutely right, and it is not confined to any geographical area. We have it worldwide now. It is, let me put this straight for anybody who is listening to you and doesn't buy into your Babylon thing, the world is now full of Babylon. And if we don't come out of her, we lose this spiritual Armageddon you're talking about. It's not a battle, it's not an event that's going to take place. Like you said, it's been going on. It's this spiritual warfare. And if you look back in the Old Testament, Megiddo, the place where all these battles took place in the Old Testament, Hebrew term is still the same for that, but the New Testament term in the Greek is Armageddon. same thing and the same kind of context is that it's a location where two of these groups battle. It is Satan versus us. It's always going to be that. And that's what we're in now. We have become Babylon. I'm sorry, but the United States seems to be the poster child right now.
It does.
Yeah.
It does, and you know, that kind of puts us in the situation. The Masons, the Master Mason, Albert Pike, Civil War general, predicted we'd have a war with the Muslims. Now, I've got a lady friend that stays here. She was over in Libya. Her daughter was raped by Muslims. She don't like them at all. She don't appreciate them. She don't think they got anything right, and she thinks they're evil. And she could be right. But the Jews who say they're Jews but are not, or of the synagogue of Satan, are sitting behind the scenes. They're the ones that are making the money off of the money. They're the ones that are making the money off of the weapons. They're the ones that...
Let's be equitable with that. So many of the Christian, so-called Christian churches, they've got the same problem the Muslims do.
I agree.
What you got, and I'm not going to call the name, but there's one of them that's got a guy with a little top knot on him that runs around in a fancy car all the time and calls himself the Pope of the world. But that religion has, what, a bunch of people that knowingly they're graduating from their seminaries, knowing that they have a propensity for messing around with children. They've got a fund set aside to legally handle that for their people. I'm sorry, that's not the only place you find this. And when you start hanging these people up and setting them up high above a group of people and saying, this guy's going to tell you thus saith the Lord, and they don't even open the Bible, they're giving you their opinion and some kind of political rhetoric and trying to set you up for the New World Order with the UN as the force that will keep the police state going. Who are they loyal to? It isn't my God, it isn't Jesus, it is a political faction, and they don't belong in the church any more than they belong in the Muslim religion.
Now, first of all, Muhammad was illiterate, so somebody else wrote the Quran.
Oh yeah.
And I saw a movie made in the 50s about his people, his followers, that he sent to Ethiopia because the ruler there was a Christian. And there wasn't that much difference at that time between the Christians and the Muslims. But the Pharisaic types that were advising the king called them religious rebels because they didn't want to pay their tribute to their little stone gods. and if this is my question to you, Jake. If God is if there's one God, which Muslims and Christians agree on, do you think he cares what name you call him by?
No. No, I think there's made too much of that. And the true Jew has a tendency to do that. Oh, well, you're not using the right term, or, you know, and there are some Christian religions that say if you don't baptize in this name or that name, you're not for real. I agree. There is one God, but he has many names, and as long as you're paying tribute to him or bowing to him or using him as God, I think you're all right.
You know, let me stop you just a second.